Thank you so much for joining us today for our live webinar. Today we're going to be talking with Dr. Vicki Ratner, our special guest, on how to make money billing for medical doctors. A frank interview with a physician. And let me just introduce myself to some of you who've not been on one of these webinars. My name is Patrick Phillips. I'm the founder and the CEO of American Business Systems. Our website there is the bottom of the slide there, absystems.com, and hopefully that's how you got to this webinar. But if this is your first time to hear from us, then welcome. We do these every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Time. I'm an author. You can go out to Amazon.com and find these 3 books that I've written there. One of them with Dr. Vicki Ratner. You'll see that in the middle there. We'll talk about that book here just a little bit later in the webinar. I'm also on the editorial board of Billing and Coding Advantage magazine. It's a print magazine. Yes, they still print magazines. Over 40,000 subscribers. Everybody that's in the billing and coding industry subscribes to this magazine. It's really, really big, and I have articles in there on a regular basis. We've been doing what we do here at ABS for the last 26 years. Yeah, 26 years ago, my wife and I started doing medical billing for doctors here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we've been working with other people, training and supporting other people who wanted to know how to get started in the same business. You can check us out with the Fort Worth Better Business Bureau. We have an A+ rating there. The only way you get that, of course, is by just doing what you say you're going to do. Our special guest today, as I mentioned earlier, is Dr. Vicki Ratner. She is a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, and she's also an author herself. Here's some of the books that she's written. Some of her latest ones are not even here in this graphic yet because they're just now being published. And she also contributes to several online newsletters that are out there aimed at doctors and physicians. As retired general surgeon, she dealt with thousands of patients over a several-year period and decided at one point that she wanted to help doctors to thrive and prosper in their own practices. So she's also the chair of the advisory board for MERMA, the Medical Revenue Management Association of America. These are the people that help heal the private practice by helping them with their cash flow. And that, of course, is the organization that certifies our licensees. Once you've gone through our training, you'll be certified by MERMA as a certified medical revenue manager. All right, let's see if Dr. Vicki is still on the line here. I think she has her webcam there. She is live from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Dr. Vicki, since this is a live webinar, I thought it would be ridiculous if we didn't at least ask your opinion about what you think about this whole coronavirus thing going on. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Oh, thank you for asking, Patrick. So I am a surgeon by training, and I am trained and disciplined to take a look at what we know and help people make good choices. And Patrick, the honest truth is I think we are in fact dealing with an epidemic of fear. I personally have been talking with lots and lots of people. This seems to be the topic that people are talking about. In fact, my son recently had made plans to go visit Seattle, which was a hotspot, right? There's a state of emergency declared in Washington state. Should he go? Is it dangerous to go? And I just had a talk with him and said, hey, look, if we go to the CDC, what we see is that between October 1st and February 29th in the US, there have been between 20 and 50,000 deaths just here. And we're comparing that to 11 deaths in Washington state. So
those were from other types of flus. Is that what the deaths were from?
Right. So the coronavirus is not a flu virus. It's a different kind of virus. So if viruses were like vegetables, coronavirus is like carrots, and the influenza virus is like peppers. So they're different kinds of viruses. They're spread in a similar way. We cough and sneeze them out. The viruses land on surfaces. We touch those surfaces, and then we actually touch our faces about a couple dozen times an hour So that's the way that the viruses get themselves into our body, whether it's COVID-19 or the influenza virus. But statistically, the real risk is influenza. The good news, though, is everything that we're doing around the COVID virus is going to help decrease the risk of influenza. But, I'm traveling a lot. I'm doing a lot of speaking. What I told my son is, God forbid, statistically, his major risk of harm traveling to Seattle is probably the rides to and from the airport. I mean, statistically, that is where the risk is.
Yeah.
But because this COVID thing is new and novel, it feels more scary. From a physician's perspective, though, I know that we run the risk of having an awful lot of people infected, but I see a lot of fear-based irrational behavior, like the run on toilet paper. It makes no sense. What's going on in the stock market? It doesn't make rational sense. So we're dealing with an irrational situation here. And I think my role is to help people stay calm and centered and make good reasoned choices instead of just getting on the bandwagon of fear.
Well, how do you think that would affect? Well, first of all, let me give a little summary here real quickly because I didn't say anything about what our business is all about. I'm assuming people know, but folks, we train people how to do the billing for doctors, basically. And so you'll be working from home. Most of our licensees at least start out that way. And of course, working from home, they're kind of quarantining themselves there if they have their own home business, aren't they?
Exactly. So in the short term, I think we're going to be dealing with COVID and the consequences at least through the summer. And this means a lot of craziness for doctors. Things are very, very chaotic for doctors because there's so much uncertainty, there's so much worry. So doctors are feeling really, really stressed. They're stressed because of the financial consequences. You've watched what the stock market is doing. And so there's a lot of doctors who've just lost a lot of money in the market over the past couple of weeks. That's additional stress. And what they don't need is the stress of wondering, am I going to get paid? Because, let's say their office manager who's doing the billing gets sick, whether it's the flu or whether it's COVID-19. Suddenly a doctor is faced with this question, okay, well, what's going to happen to my cash flow? And believe me, I was in a situation like that. I had joined a private practice and our office manager quit. And it was chaos. It was complete chaos. Instead of taking money out of the practice, we were making owner investments to pay our quarterly taxes. And this is a stress doctors do not want.
Well, and that's a good point. People who work there in the doctor's office, if they're in charge of the billing and they get sick and can't bill for the doctor, his cash flow just stops. That's not a good thing.
Right. It's a scary thing, actually. And, who is going to be exposed to COVID-19 the most? It's going to be healthcare professionals. So, anybody who's at risk, it's the doctors who are at risk and the doctor's staff also.
I would think telemedicine would be booming right now.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of great advantages. If you're sick, you don't necessarily want to leave the house and you don't necessarily want to go to a germ-infected environment. So
Right.
I think that people really are interested in seeing the doctor virtually. And with video conferencing, this is very easy to do. I know, for example, a dermatologist who, says, just send me a picture of your rash and we'll get on and I'll tell you what's going instead of making a trip in. So yes, I think anything that people can do remotely is going to be more and more popular. There are a lot of universities who are just offering online courses. They're canceling classes.
Yeah, all that. Well,
Yeah.
and our system, as you know, our electronic medical records system for doctors has a patient portal built into it that has telemedicine. So literally, Just like I'm talking to you right now, you could be my doctor, and I could be showing you my rash or something over here on my arm via video. Why wouldn't we use technology to cut down the travel, the time, the in-person visits when a doctor can see a patient in 10 minutes on a telemedicine, and bill for that? So
Right, right. So I'm an eternal optimist. I'm always looking at the world through rose-colored lenses. But Patrick, I think you have really identified a really important thing. Necessity, or the perceived necessity, is going to drive some good things. And I think telemedicine is a good thing. I think decentralizing tasks, like billing, something that's so vital for a doctor's financial health. I think that more and more doctors are going to be open to outsourcing billing simply because of all of the pressures that we're facing right now.
yeah, if you can get something outside your office and it costs you less than what you're paying now to have it done inside your office, it just doesn't make sense to at least not try that. And that's what some doctors do. They'll go, okay, I'll give this a shot because if it does save me money, which we can prove that it will in most cases, it's a no risk situation for them. Now,
Right.
you said something one time to me that I thought was very interesting because I know that you deal with a lot of financial advisors, helping them to market to doctors. And so this is your quote: "The physician's pain is your opportunity." That's sad to think of that, but that's true.
It is. Now, here's the shocking news for probably most of the people who are on the line. You might think about, doctors being really, really smart and, they've got it together. But the reality is that doctors do not do a very good job with their money. In fact, according to surveys, about half of doctors report that they're behind in retirement planning. A lot of doctors have their retirement funds in the stock market in some way or another. And you've probably noticed that the market has taken a big nosedive. So there are an awful lot of doctors in financial pain right now. Not only were they wondering 4 months ago, what am I going to do about retirement? But now the pressure is on. And so any way that doctors can sort of get in the driver's seat of their financial lives is something that's very, very attractive to them. And Patrick, you taught me that most doctors are walking away from about 30% of their revenue by not following up on insurance claims. Now, insurance companies are in the business of making money. They know that if they reject insurance claims, that they're going to have that money. They can make money over the course of a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So this is really cynical, but there's a strong reason for insurance companies to reject claims. Doctors are really busy, they're really stressed, and oftentimes following up on these insurance claims takes a backseat to taking care of patients. And so there's a lot of doctors who will just take those rejected claims and their CPA says, oh, this is good, this is a tax write-off for you. But there's really a much smarter way of managing finances and managing revenue. So outsourced medical billing is really a great solution. I mean, if I wanted to increase my revenue by 30%, what would I rather do? See 30% more patients or just get paid for what I've already done?
Yeah, that just makes sense. I know you've told me this story about when you actually did go into practice with another doctor, and you had a little situation there where the billing was being done in-house. Can you kind of share that with folks? I think that's an interesting story.
Okay, so when I got out of my surgical residency, I knew that I wanted a little experience before I went out on my own. So I joined another surgeon who had been in private practice for ages. And he had one office assistant, and she describes herself as doing everything except the operating. And I joined, and it wasn't too long that I'd been there that she handed in her resignation. And In retrospect, I think that she was probably stealing from the practice, and my questions might have been pointing in the direction of her being found out. So she handed in her resignation. My partner's wife said, "How hard can this billing stuff be? Why don't I just take some time from my tennis game and come in and do the billing?" And it wasn't very long before she said, "Uncle, like, this is not simple, this is not easy, this is not straightforward. Let's get somebody in so we can pay for membership in our tennis club." So we hired a temp to do scheduling and things like that. We got this really lovely woman that everyone loved. She would go out in the waiting room. She would help the little old ladies fill out their paperwork. And in the meanwhile, we advertised for somebody who would do our billing for us. Well, a couple months after we actually did the hiring, we got a call from the temp agency saying, "We're really, really sorry to tell you this, but it turns out that that temp that we sent to you, she's a convicted Medicare felon. And so just like
Oh
watch your billing carefully. If you see any irregularities, know that she might be a part of it." But by that time, things were so chaotic that even if there were irregularities, we wouldn't have known. So I've sort of faced all of the billing disasters. Like, I see the downside of keeping billing in-house. And in fact, when I went out on my own, the first choice that I made was to outsource my billing because I wanted certainty about getting money into my practice. I didn't want to have to worry about the mortgage. I didn't have to worry about meeting payroll. I wanted certainty that I was going to get paid.
yeah, I don't think most doctors even think about the fact that, if they're having it done in-house by their own staff, it doesn't even dawn on them that it's possible for people to steal money from them. I mean, that has happened more than one time with our licensees, that they found out that the person that the doctor replaced with them to do the billing was, stealing money somewhere behind the scenes. I guess there's all kinds of ways to do that, manipulating the books. So
Right, right. Well, doctors actually are very aware of this. This is a top concern of theirs. In fact, I know the editor of the Journal of Medical Practice Management, and she said in each issue, they have to have something about theft and fraud because this is a real big concern. So who is the doctor who's the most likely victim? It's exactly like somebody like us. It's this person who has been there forever and ever. The doctor wants to believe that these people are trustworthy, and so they ignore that small, still voice that says, "There's something not quite right here." So this is huge for doctors. Doctors are conservative by nature, and what's the best way to protect yourself? It's by putting in checks and balances. So, the person who's doing the billing is not the same person who's depositing checks and taking co-pays from patients. I mean, it's just a smart thing to do to put checks and balances in place and keep honest people honest.
yeah, that's right. Well, there's a question here from Alan. He says, Dr. Vicki, is it really cheaper for a doctor to outsource than to do it themselves? I don't think most people realize how many hidden costs there are, behind the scenes, so to speak, that doctors are aware of, but most people don't even think about when they add up the costs of what it really, because they probably think, oh, look, you pay somebody $12 an hour or whatever to do the billing, and that's your cost. But there's a lot of hidden costs too, aren't there?
There are. And I mean, these numbers tell a story, but here's the even bigger story. I mean, what is the cost of not collecting? Okay, so the person who is sending out these claims in-house, what's their incentive to make sure that things are really billed and coded correctly
Yeah,
and collected? They have no incentive because they're going to get paid their same $14 an hour, whether or not everything's getting paid. And what if they do observe that they've got a 30% rejection rate? What's their incentive for going to the doctor and saying, "Hey, doc, you know, 30% of the claims have been rejected. I mean, that makes them look bad.
Yeah.
So you've got a whole system in place that is misaligned, that doesn't help the doctor get what they want and need, which is to get paid for the services they render.
Yeah, all they want to do is, I mean, whatever is due to them, they'd like to get paid that. The problem is that the insurance companies are fighting constantly to not pay them. They'll reject every 10th claim or whatever. I think they're shredding them somewhere down in the basement at the companies because, the more money they can keep in their bank account, the better, right? So they don't have any incentive to pay the doctor the maximum. And as you mentioned, most billiers and billing systems, they're losing 30%. They're leaving 30% on the table. With our system, again, as you know, because you've worked with our licensees, it can collect up to 98% of that money. So that's a huge difference between 70% of collected money and 98%. There's more money on the table for the doctor, and of course these costs are just ridiculous. The difference between outsourcing and doing it inside there.
Right. The other thing that I liked when I was a practicing physician was I liked the fact that my outsourced biller, her name's Tammy, that Tammy and I had our financial incentives aligned. Like we both were better off when she did a really good job of collecting. I like the fact that she was going to get a percentage of what she collected for me, because that way I knew that she was going to work hard.
Yeah, that's that. Like you said, they don't have any incentive. I mean, they look at the doctor; he's driving a Mercedes or Tesla or some other expensive car, and they're driving a little, Volkswagen or something, and they go, he or she doesn't need any more money than they're getting. So
Right.
there's no motivation at all. Whereas with our licensees, they charge a percentage of everything that is billed for the doctor. So there's an incentive for them to collect every penny they can.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things you've mentioned to me, and you just mentioned it earlier about the fact that doctors are scared about, fraud and so forth. I noticed that one of the things that doctors have said in the past is that they are scared of lawsuits, avoiding lawsuits. And as you know, we have one of the services that our licensees can offer is Audit Guard, which goes in and audits the codes that they're currently using to make sure that they're not overcoding or undercoding. Can you kind of explain to people what that's all about, the codes?
Right. So, well, let me just step back a little. I won't go too far back, but so up until the time of the Affordable Care Act, the amount of money that Medicare paid an individual doctor was top secret. And part of the Affordable Care Act was a move towards transparency. So for the first time, the American public got a chance to see where the Medicare dollars were being spent. Not surprisingly, they found that there were some outliers. There were some doctors who were getting way more Medicare dollars than other people were doing. Okay, how do you explain that? Well, maybe it's fraudulent billing. There are some bad apples there. So if we can just go after those bad apple doctors, we're gonna do better with our Medicare dollars. So I know this sounds crazy, but there are like bounty hunters out there looking for doctors who are engaging in Medicare fraud. And when these bounty hunters can find these doctors, they get a percentage of what they collect. I know this sounds like science fiction, but it's real.
Yeah.
So doctors are really worried, am I going to come under scrutiny for fraud, for billing fraud? And probably the best way for a doctor to protect themselves is to be somewhere in the middle. Like there's a standard of care in the community. So you don't want to bill more than most of the doctors in your community or less than most of the doctors in the community. It's kind of like the three little bears. You want to be just right. Okay, if somebody is just doing billing for one doctor, they lose sight of what's going on around them. Like Tammy, who did my billing, she did billing for lots of surgeons like me. So she could help keep me in the middle and reduce my risk for being pegged as an outlier, right? So this is something that's really important for doctors because, you know, in the American legal system, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. If somebody is accusing you of billing fraud, you are assumed guilty unless you can prove yourself to be innocent. And proving yourself innocent is a huge challenge. So this is like a really big fear that all doctors get. Am I going to get audited?
Right.
And what will the results be? You know, if you think about like being audited for taxes, how scary that is, and then multiplying that by like 10, that's the level of fear that doctors have about having their billing being audited. And then you had mentioned lawsuits. That's another thing that doctors really fear. I mean, they lose sleep at night about it. And it's kind of interesting. I actually was an expert in medical malpractice litigation. Bad stuff happens to patients all the time. So why do some patients sue their doctors and other patients don't? And I read something like really fascinating. Oftentimes, it's the unhappy patient who picks up the phone and calls the lawyer. What are they most unhappy about? Oftentimes, it has to do with billing practices. So they have some kind of financial concern and they don't feel like the doctor or the office is responsive to them. So, you know, when I talk with doctors about how they can decrease the risk of being sued, you know, having a system to handle money and handle money complaints is like really high on the to-do list.
I can imagine. You know, one of the things our director of support just told me the other day is that our electronic medical record system, EMRX, we call it, has the corona already, the codes are already in there for that. COVID-19, yeah. And that, of course, cloud-based systems are the best way to go because you see, if people have a server-based software that has to have updates sent out to them, they're not going to be up to date on all those codes. Our codes are always up to date and accurate because every time you log in, you're using the current codes. We have certified medical coders who keep those codes up to date. So people wonder, how do I learn how to do this business when I'm not a coder, I'm not a biller? Folks, we teach you all that you need to know, and the codes are built into our system, so you don't have to know those, what, 78,000 codes or whatever there is out there now. Yeah, and then I mentioned earlier I'm going to put this slide up because this is talking about our patient portal. Folks, if you look at any billing system that's out there and it does not have the patient portal and the telemedicine already built in, believe me, you're not going to be offering the doctor what they need in today's world. That is the latest technology. Ours has got the latest stuff in there. Dr. Vicki, there's another question here about you and speaking of people who are going to a doctor. What is it, this question specifically is, what is it that I need to know about, from a doctor standpoint, about dealing with the patients? Will I be interfacing directly with the patients? And of course, they don't in our system, they don't have to, but should doctors even be, are people be concerned about dealing with the patients directly? Your biller didn't do that much of that, I don't guess.
No, she didn't. So there was, now I'm not sure that I'm understanding the question. I really want to make sure that you get your questions answered. But are you concerned about your own safety if you're going to be exposed to the virus? Is that what you're asking about? Or are you asking what kind of contact are you going to have with the patient, like about collections and things like that? So if you could just,
yeah,
if you could just clarify.
You said, yes, this is just my concern about having contact with patients. I can probably answer that myself, Dr. Vicki, as I think about it. I think she's concerned about how much contact with patients that she has to have. And of course, we have a collection system built into ours that's all done virtually. There's no phone calls that have to be made or any direct contact with patients. It's not like you're calling up little Mrs. Jones saying, okay, where's that $20 that you're supposed to pay this month? So I think that was the concern that person has there. Let's see, there's a question here that I'm not real clear on. It's from Abelderez, says, is there a package to work with? I'm not sure what that question means. If you can kind of clarify that, we'll go on with that. Dr. Vicki, let me ask you this. One of the things that I think concerns people is being in this business is there some responsibility? Are they liable in any way? You mentioned lawsuits, for example. The doctors are concerned about that, but a medical biller is really just doing whatever the doctor says to do, right?
Right. So I would be very, very surprised if a medical biller were ever pulled into a medical malpractice lawsuit, because you're not directly involved with patient care, and that's what lawsuits are about. I don't know, what do you recommend for your licensees, Patrick? Do they have errors and omissions insurance?
Yes, there's an insurance that is called errors and omissions. It's just what it sounds like. An insurance company is covering you for, you just made an error or an omission of some kind. It's not like you intentionally were trying to defraud the government or the insurance companies. And so that type of insurance is very inexpensive, for up to $1 million. I think it's a couple $100 a year. It's not expensive, but it's that reassurance that you can have as a person working for a doctor out of your home, that you're not responsible for any of that. Besides, as long as you keep good records and you can show, since ours is all done online anyway, you can show the history of what the doctor said to do and what you did. And as long as you're doing what the doctor says to do, that goes back on him or her, not
Right.
you.
Right, exactly.
I'll just put it this way. In 26 years of dealing with licensees all over the country, hundreds and hundreds of doctors, clients, we've never had anybody get involved in anything legally like that. Yeah.
Great. I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah. What kind of speaking do you do for doctor groups, and why is it that they want to hear from you? Can you give us a little bit feel for, maybe tied in with some of the books that you've written?
You bet. So I'm doing something just totally crazy. You are looking at the international expert about doctors and their relationship with money. So I've spoken with hundreds and hundreds of doctors about how they make money choices. And my books, The Myth of the Rich Doctor and the 9 Money Mistakes That Doctors Make, are very popular. They have me going all over the United States talking to groups of doctors. So I don't offer financial advice. I'm kind of like the cultural anthropologist who is just fascinated with how doctors make money decisions. As an ABS licensee, the way that this is important is that, if you own a small business, you are probably taking a look at the bottom line. You want to be profitable, you want to be cash flow positive. But doctors have kind of crazy habits when it comes to running their practice. So while the doctor might know more about how to treat breast cancer, you probably know more than the doctor about how to run profitable organizations. And it's not that doctors aren't smart enough. It's just that we have a very dysfunctional relationship with money, which is another reason I think that they need ABS licensees so much. In retrospect, I think that outsourcing my billing was one of the keys to my practice success, because Tammy took me through the numbers. She said, look, this is where most of your income is coming from these kinds of procedures. Do you like seeing these kinds of patients? And look, every time you see this kind of patient, you're losing money. So as I was growing my practice and deciding how I wanted to turn, this kind of information really helped me be successful. And there's the book.
Yeah, this one is the one that's got groups all over the country want you to come speak on this topic, don't they? Because it is a myth. Doctors go to college, I think, thinking, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money, and then it turns out it's not as profitable for some of them in private practice as they thought it was going to be, because they're not collecting what they should be collecting from the insurance companies.
Right.
Um, by the way, do you mind if I give a copy of this to everybody today?
Oh, please do. And please read it because I think this is going to give you important insights that will really help you engage doctors. So, Patrick, it's always such an honor to work with your ABS licensees and really give them tips about how to successfully engage doctors. But let me just tell a little story that I normally share with the ABS licensees. So you are wired like a suit, a business-minded person. And doctors are wired like white coats, and they're really, really quite different. And a failure to understand that can really get in the way of your business success. So one of my favorite shows is Shark Tank. This doctor went on Shark Tank to get funding for his company Syndaver. He sold synthetic cadavers. This is a billion-dollar industry. He'd had millions in sales. The sharks were all engaged, and I thought, this guy's going to get a 5-shark deal. But then the questions started. Mr. Wonderful said, well, tell us about your cash flow, tell us about your revenue. And there on national TV, that doctor said, well, I suppose I could be making lots of money if I wanted to, but money's not really that important to me. I'm here to make a difference.
Oh my goodness, that's the wrong answer for the sharks.
Exactly. So 4 sharks were out. He made a deal with Robert Herjavec that fell apart just in a couple of weeks. And the problem was that this doctor was trying to persuade the sharks, but he was using the wrong language. The thing that was most important to them, which is getting their money back and making money, the guy was just dismissing. Well, what does this have to do with you and ABS licensees? Well, imagine that there is another reality show called Surgeon's Lounge. And so a licensee goes into the lounge. They want to do a deal with as many doctors as possible. And all they talk about is profitability and the money. They're probably going to get the same kind of result that the doctor got who went on Shark Tank. You push the doctor's buy button by showing them how they can be of greater service. That's really what drives doctors. And so understanding how doctors' minds work and what inspires them to take action is really important. It can mean the difference between, leaving the Shark Tank with a deal and not leaving it with a deal. So part of what ABS licensees get is this kind of insider information that's really going to allow you to successfully sign up doctor clients.
Yeah, and that's really all we have to offer as a company. Not that we don't teach them the basics, of course, of medical billing and so forth, the terminology and all the things they need in our online training sessions. But it's our expertise really over the past 26 years that people really think it's worth the investment, because we know how to find the clients out there and help them sign up those doctors. Without a client, you may have the greatest software in the world, but you're not in business until you have a client. So that's what we do.
Okay. So if I may, Patrick, I'm going to put my humility aside for a minute and just tell people that the most influential person in a doctor's life is another doctor. Like when I broke out on my own, I knew I wanted to outsource my billing. So what did I do? I asked other doctors, hey, who are you using for your billing? And do you like this person? And when Tammy's name kept on coming up again and again, I hadn't even met Tammy, but I had decided that I wanted Tammy because that's what other doctors said. Well, part of the value of being an ABS licensee is the ability to sort of connect your reputation with mine. And it involves concrete things like being able to put your name on a book that I've written right below mine. It means having access to a letter of introduction that I, as a physician, will write to another physician. This is very powerful. This is medical marketing magic. And this is something that is unique to ABS. Patrick, are you aware of any other organization who offers this kind of competitive advantage?
No, in fact, when you suggested a few years back that we write this book together and that we allow the licensee to put their name on the cover, I thought, well, what do you mean? They're not going to be writing the book with us. And you said, well, it's real simple. We just write a real generic, uh, introduction to the book, forward, and that you let them put their name as the one who wrote that, and give them the option, if they want to write their own, which some have. But there it is right there. I'm going to show you in this slide here, for example. I'm going to slide this book up and let you guys see real close here at the bottom. You'll see that there is a forward by Susan Smith, CMRN. Now that's what you're certified as, a certified medical revenue manager. So imagine having your name there. That's your name instead of Susan Smith. Right there under my name and Dr. Vicki Ratner. You don't get any better marketing credibility than that right there.
Right. So it's like if you went to an exclusive club, there would be like this red velvet rope. I mean, having your name tied to a physician is like having somebody open up the red velvet rope and say,
Yeah,
come on in.
that's right.
So this is, again, my humility is being put aside, but this is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, here's your name right on the inside of the book when they open it up again. And then at the end of the forward, which is 2 pages long, I think, you actually have your contact information right there at the bottom of that. Let me push this one to the back and make this one bigger where people can see this. There's your contact information. Now this is fake here that we've got on here, but it's just right there at the end of the forward. So again, from a marketing standpoint, it doesn't get any better than this to have your phone number, your email, your website right there in the book itself. So it's a wonderful marketing tool. And of course, in addition to that, Dr. Vicki mentioned that she will write a letter on her letterhead signed by her that introduces you and your company to the doctors in your area. The reason she can do that, of course, is because she knows that you are a part of the nation's largest network, ABS, and the fact that we are behind you. We're backing everything that you do. None of our licensees are out there on their own. They have us and our history. Then she came up with another book here that we have available for our licensees that you can put your name on, this one on the back cover. So it's a wonderful, again, marketing tool that gives you the ability to get your name in front of a doctor and give them a gift. That's important, isn't it? Giving gifts.
Gift giving is huge. So it does two things. First, it activates the law of reciprocity, right? Because if you're doing something nice for the doctor is going to want to do something nice for you. It establishes your expert positioning, right? Because now you're the person with the name on the cover of the book. And what is an expert? Oh, they wrote the book on it. So you're going to be perceived differently in a doctor's eyes. And third, people don't throw away books. They're going to keep a book like this on their shelf. And guess what? That means your name goes on the shelf too. So I've been creating marketing materials for about a decade. Books are the thing that work the best.
Yeah, there's nothing like a book to add, again, the credibility of somebody. Now, if you could write your own book, that would be the best ultimate thing, of course, to be the author. But just to have your name on the cover with a doctor that's written a book aimed at your prospects, it just doesn't get any better than that.
What kinds of results are people having with these marketing tools, by the way? Any new stories about this?
You know, I don't know if I've told you this or not, but I interviewed somebody on one of these webinars recently. She said that she had given out 2 of these books in 1 week to 2 different prospective doctors, and that she just left it with them. Basically said, here's a gift. I just wanted to show you that, I'm thinking about you. And, and both of those doctors called her up the next week and said, awesome. I've read your book. And they thought it was her book,
Right.
Read your book. Yeah. And so it's that third party credibility that's just automatically there. And she signed both of those doctors up as clients. So
oh, that's great. I love hearing those stories.
It happens all the time. Now, this is what I'm showing here is the practice revenue report. We mentioned earlier Dr. Vicki did, that you can actually, let me get this one up here, this one that you can actually see. Here we go. This is the report that our software prints out once you've gotten some information from the doctor's office. So these numbers you plug into this are numbers you got from the office manager or from the doctor themselves. And as you can see, this particular office was doing $100,000 a month in billing, but they had a 25% what we call rejected or uncollected claim rate, which is close to the 30% you mentioned earlier. This is actually a little less. But look at the bottom line. You've already glanced down there and seen that this licensee, because our system has a less than 2% rejection rate, we can increase their revenue by $113,000 in a year's time. That's $260,000 per year increase. So anyway, it's just incredible what you can do. And by the way, I put a copy of that, I think, in the handouts. Now, Dr. Vicki's book is over there, and I don't see this, so I'm going to go drop that in there right now as we wrap up. Dr. Vicki, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your thoughts on this business and why doctors are outsourcing their billing, at least what they should be. And any last thoughts that you have here as we wrap up that you can share with the licensees?
Yeah. So thanks for the invitation to be here. And as you know, Patrick, I am a serial entrepreneur. I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And I mean, I've made some investments that haven't worked out so well. I've made some financial mistakes. And so over the years, I've sort of figured out what I want to invest in and what I don't want to invest in. And I am always interested in things like, is there a market for this product or service? Is it a growing market? Is there a known path for success? Like, are there buyers out there? And is there a way of engaging the buyers? And I'm excited about this opportunity because it checks off every single one of the check marks that I have about what's a good investment. And, on the other side, just from a personal point of view, I am very, very committed to helping doctors thrive. And I know that the foundation for thriving is having a financial foundation. And I know that every time an ABS licensee is successful, that means that 5, 10, 50 more doctors are more successful and contributing to the community. So it's just a real honor to work with you, Patrick, to work with a person of integrity who actually does what they say they're going to do, and to work with the ABS licensees. I think that this is really a win all around. I don't know how you found out about this opportunity, but this is really, it's a gem. And I thank you for spending this time to at least get one person's opinion about what's up with it. And if you do move forward, it'll be great to work with you and to support your success. So thank you so much, Patrick.
You're welcome, and thank you for being on here today. Some of the steps that you can take if you'd like to know more about the business is look over our downloadable research guide. Now, the way you do that is you get back with the person who invited you to this webinar and just ask them to send that to you. It's about 50 pages, has a lot of good information in there about a lot of things. So anything you want to know about this business, it's in that guide called the Research Guide. Number 2, be sure and browse our YouTube channel. It's right out there on youtube.com/whyabs. You'll see that right here on the screen, whyabs. The YouTube channel that's out there with not only will this recording of this webinar be there, but there's hundreds of others over the past years that we've put out there on our YouTube channel, including interviews with licensees. Be sure and look for those because you'll hear from people who've gone through our training and how they've been successful building their business. The next step is be sure to ask your ABS rep for an owner reference list. If you'd like to talk to some people who have gone through our training and have graciously offered to take some phone calls, you're welcome to get that list from us as well. and we'll share that with you. It's again a list of the people's names and addresses and contact information. Then be sure and ask for that live demo that I mentioned earlier, where we'll get online with you and walk through our software with you step by step so you can see it in detail and ask all the questions you want, and then review the purchase agreement and the funding instructions that we'll send to you. And so that will be a 4-page document there. The agreement is very short and sweet, and it'll be something you can review as well. By the way, we're the only company that I know of selling a business opportunity / franchise that gives a money-back guarantee. And it's real simple. If you go through our training and then decide that this is not something that you thought you should have invested in, we'll give you all your money back. Now, how can we do that? Well, in 26 years, we literally have a handful of people that have asked for their money back. It does happen, and we have returned people's money. So if that's your case, for some reason you don't like the business, you get your money back. However, it's very rare, and that's why we can offer that, because we know what we have and believe in what we're doing. Our training is all online. It used to be live down here in the Dallas area at a hotel, and you had to fly in here and so forth. Fortunately, you don't have to do that. You can take it online with one of our certified medical revenue manager instructors who will connect with you, just like we're doing here today on this webinar through GoToMeeting, and teach you exactly what you need to know about this business in 8 different sessions. They're from an hour to an hour and a half. Now, let me warn you though, folks, this time of the year, as spring gets closer here, our slots for those training sessions fill up very quickly. If you want to get in this business, I suggest you get your due diligence done and put your funding together, ask all the questions, get the live demo, talk to some of our licensees, and get your first class booked as quickly as possible. That will be important. By the way, you can come down and visit us if you'd like to meet us face to face even. Just call us and let us know, or email us and say, hey, I'd like to come spend some time with you in your offices, and we'll be there and meet you and answer all your questions person to person. So here's our phone number I've got on the screen there. I'll just leave that there as we wrap up today. Be sure and go register for the next week's webinar and get all the handouts there. And let's see, I see one question here from Ahmad says, what's the length of the training, how many days, and how many hours a day? Well, again, there are 8 modules, Ahmad, that we'll take you through for your what we call your initial training. Now, we have a licensee website that's out there. Let me see if I have that up here and can show that to you. Yeah, I'm going to show this to you live here since we've got just a couple minutes left. There it is. This is our licensee site. Now, you can't actually go to it because you can't log in, but I can show you that there's lots and lots of other training here. So once you've completed those 8 modules of an hour to an hour and a half a piece, that's what, 12 to, let's say it's 8 to 12 hours, right? Then you have a lot of other training that you can go through right here on our licensee support site. So it doesn't stop, but that's what we call our initial training to get you at least enough information so that you can get out there and get your first client. And then you can continue training with some back-end training here on our website as much as you want. It's all up to you. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slide there, and I'll put that on the screen and leave that there so that you can call us right now if you'd like to, and just let us know what you need. And we'll hopefully see you on next week's webinar. I call everybody who signs up for our training, and I'll be talking to you personally myself and getting to know you a little bit better as you sign up for the live training, online training. And so I'll be spending a little time with you and helping you to get off and running just as quickly as we can. Folks, we're very interested in your success. We make money as you make money, and so it's a win-win situation for everybody. There are no territories, there are no royalties like a franchise. This is a great business to be in, and by talking to some of our existing business owners, you'll find that out.